welcome to this short presentation about studying for the MSc in Translation Studies at the University of Glasgow. So I am Dr. Jonathan Evans. I'm Reader in Translation Studies here in the College of Arts at the University of Glasgow. And I'm also the program convener for the MSc Translation Studies and a researcher in Translation Studies. And I tend to work on the translation of film and media, but also on literary translation. So the program here at Glasgow is a nice combination of theory and practice in translation studies. Everybody does two core courses, which include translation studies in theory and practice and approaches to the translation of the professional environment, to give you an overview of theoretical approaches to translation, but also how it works in the real world. All students have to take a language-specific translation workshop each semester. So you get weekly translation tasks, which you then discuss with your classmates and your tutor to look at ways to improve. We have you then have to take two more options. These include our translation-specific options, like literary translation, subtitling film and TV, or marketing and translation across media. Or you could take another course from across the College of Arts and Humanities, or from the School of Modern Languages and Cultures. Finally, over the summer, you'll do a dissertation if you're doing it in 1 year. If you're doing it as a part-time student, you do that in the second year. So why would you choose this program? Well, I think it offers a great combination of theory and practice. So you get to fully understand how translation works and ideas about translation, but also you get a very practical insight into how things work and how you can improve your own translation practice. We have a nice mix of creative and critical assessments. So you can write translations and commentaries, you'll do little short assessments, you can do reflective essays, or you can do a more traditional critical essay. Most of our classes use small group teaching, so you get to know your tutors, you get to know your classmates really well. In all of the assessments, there's a good chance to explore your own areas of interest, and you get to discuss these with the tutor so that you can do the best assessments for yourself. We have a really strong employability focus, and we offer extra sessions on CV writing, working with agencies, and so on. But we also offer great academic support in essay writing, reading academic journal articles, and just developing yourself academically as well at postgraduate level. And the postgraduate environment in SMLC is great. It's really friendly. It's not a big department, so you get a chance to meet a lot of people, and you get to know both your tutors and your peers. So students have gone on to work in a variety of different fields. Many of our students do go on to work in translation and the language industry. Some go into video game localization, some have worked as subtitlers, some go on into teaching, others go into the creative industries such as publishing or media. Some go further still as PhD students and into academia, and others have gone into graduate training schemes from big companies because they have a range of communication and critical thinking skills that are sought after by many employers. So if this all sounds really interesting to you, then how you apply is you go onto the Translation Studies website, and that will have all the information that you need, what qualifications you need to have, what paperwork you need to have to support your application, and so on. So this is on the slide, but if you search MSc Translation Studies Glasgow in a search engine, this will also come up near the top. In terms of how you'll learn and the resources that we have here in Glasgow, as I said, we use very small classes and small classes. There's a lot of active learning, so we don't have a lot of lectures on this program, and you'll often get to discuss your ideas, bring in your own examples, and develop your own thinking through discussion. throughout the program. We have excellent library resources, both physical and electronic copies, so you can always get hold of things that you want for your essays. If you follow these options, we also provide translation and subtitling software. You can get a sense of the professional world of translation and the technological skills to be able to enter it. And the program draws from expertise across SMLC. So we have colleagues working in different languages and different areas of research who will come and give guest lectures in order to broaden out the things that you can learn on the program. So there's more information on this, as I said, on our website. And that's on the slide, or again, you can easily find it on the search engine. If you want to drop us a line by email, it's smlc-pgadmin@glasgow.ac.uk, and we will try and get back to you as quickly as we can. Thanks so much for listening. You'll find out more about the University of Glasgow and the College of Arts and Humanities through various different social media. Please search us up and see what's happening. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us to the Introduction to Translation Studies. I'm joined here by Dr. Jonathan Evans. If you've got any questions for him, please drop them into the chat, and also let us know where you're joining from. John, I've got a couple of questions just to give us a wee start for 10. You mentioned subtitling in the presentation there. Can you tell us a bit more about that and some of the other skills that students can expect to get on the program, please?
Okay, so with thank you very much. Yeah, with subtitling, this is a course that you can take, and we will teach you practical subtitling skills. So we use this software called Una, which is professional standard software. We use an educational version of it, which allows you to upload the video and to do all of the fiddly bits of subtitling, like the time coding. We'll teach you both subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing, so within one language, which is a really important thing, especially for accessibility. And we also look at interlingual subtitling, so from one language to another, so translational subtitling. And this is, again, students really like doing this. It's a very practical skill. We know some of our students go on to become full-time subtitlers. Subtitling is an incredibly important part of the media industry at the moment, because companies have become aware that they need to make things accessible. For platforms like Netflix or Disney Plus, everything is subtitled. So there's been a big increase in the need for subtitlers in recent years. So that's one of the important skills that is not exactly translation, but is translation adjacent, that we'll teach on the program. So we do teach translation skills. We have these weekly translation workshops, which are really basically intense sessions, learning how to translate, doing practical translations, getting feedback on your translations, discussing them with other students. Beyond translation, we consider the important intercultural skills that our students have. So learning how to work with groups coming from different locations, coming from different cultures, how to work internationally, and how to work in an environment where you may be working, at a distance from the rest of your colleagues, or you may be working with people in multiple different time zones. So we think about a lot of these employability skills, and a lot of the kind of wider intercultural skills, critical thinking skills that we know employers really want.
Fantastic, thank you. And you touched on employability there, and I know you mentioned this in the presentation as well, but can you give us a bit more of an idea of some of the career paths that graduates have taken since they've taken the program?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Our students that go on to do a variety of different things. We recently surveyed our graduates and found out where they've gone. About 50% go into translation and the translation industries. So that might be as a translator, a freelance translator, or it might be as a project manager. So the translation industry uses a lot of project managers because obviously it's agencies, and working within an agency, you're coordinating lots of different translators who are working on different projects. So quite a few of our students go into that sort of work. But I was very pleased to find that our students are often going into other industries as well, often in roles that involve communication. So they might be a media officer, they might be working in doing the sort of things that you do, Sia, of making videos and subtitling them. And they also go into academia and into teaching. But there's quite a range of fields that the skills and knowledge that you get from the translation program are really useful for. What we found is, while not everybody goes into translation in the narrow sense, a lot of people go into something that requires communication skills, writing skills, and often in an intercultural environment.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. That sounds amazing. And I'll be honest, I'm personally starting to regret not carrying on with my own languages. That sounds brilliant. And I'm sure there are many viewers who are perhaps thinking the same as well. In terms of some other questions from me, you've touched a bit on going into PhD research and academia. Do you find that students are able to take their master's dissertation topics and develop them, or do they do something different? Can you give us a bit of an idea of how that path maybe works out?
So they do a bit of both. Our students are, so the program is set up very much to be a mix of theory and practice. And we have a small number of students every year go into PhD programs all around the world. And they find that the master's has really set them up for the kind of project management skills you need for doing a PhD, but also the background knowledge to be able to go in and do a PhD. So students have gone on to do all sorts of different topics. At the moment, we have some students working on translation history. So one student is doing the translation of Eugene O'Neill in 1920s China. Somebody else was looking at the translation of feminist writers. And I have a student doing a practice-based PhD who's looking at the translation of writings by mothers of autistic children. So she's doing a translation and writing a reflective commentary on it. And so all of these projects drew on what they'd done at master's level, but took it and expanded it and made it bigger. So it wasn't necessarily a direct, here's the small thing that I did for my master's and then straight into PhD, but it was often very like, I did this at master's and it opened up these interesting questions that I want to explore more at PhD. And yeah, the students that go on to do that, I mean, they may not do it in modern languages. We've had students go on into English, and we've had students go on to other like arts and humanities PhDs. And as I said, not just in Glasgow, but around the world, where the Masters from Glasgow is, held in very high repute.
I'll be honest, I didn't realize until we had this conversation, Jonathan, just how much potential there is with this degree and how many different strands there are and opportunities for students to take. I think it sounds brilliant. Obviously, we've talked a bit there about PhD topics, but if we maybe take it back a step, am I right in thinking now's around about the time that your students are thinking about the dissertation topics? Are you able to give us a flavour of what some of them are maybe thinking this year?
Yeah, so not this year so much. They're still very nebulous this year. But in terms of master's topics, I would say 90% of our students do a translation and commentary. So they will pick a text that they're really interested in, that they think might have potential for to be published, or something that they really want to work in this area in the future, and then they'll translate that and write a commentary on it. So topics have been huge and varied. So we've had everything from working on video game narratives to the more traditional novels and short stories that people do. The most interesting ones for me have often been where people have done quite what's called auto-ethnographic research. So they'll do their translation, write some field work, like write some field notes about how they're feeling or how they're reacting, and then come back and write an ethnographic study of what they did and the effect that translation had on them, rather than the effect that they had on the translation, if that makes sense. So those have been really exciting. We've also had, we try and accommodate anything. In the past, I think the strangest one we ever had was somebody doing something on Elvish, the language from Tolkien. But we've also had people doing knitting patterns. We've had people doing financial documents. We've had people doing contracts. So if you're interested in it and can explain it and tell us what it is, there's a very good chance that we'll be able to supervise it.
Oh, that's amazing. Elvish.
Elvish.
Wow, love it. I love it. Okay, so viewers, if you're listening, there's a lot of potential for this program. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so please don't forget to pop any questions you've got in the chat. Couple of final questions from me, though. You've just touched on this a little bit. Like, there's such a vast array of different topics and interests that your students are bringing to the program. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about the wider postgraduate community in SMLC, so the School of Modern Languages and Cultures, where they'll be based?
So in SMLC is not a big school, which actually plays out really nicely for the program, because there's a very good chance you'll bump into people that have similar interests to you. And there's a good chance that you'll get to talk to staff and you'll get to talk to the PhD students. So at postgraduate level, we have 3 programs: the Translation Studies program, the Comparative Literatures program, and the MSc in TESOL. So teaching English for speakers of other languages. And those students actually often have really similar interests. So we'll have students from Complit taking translation classes, translation students take Complit classes. And we try and have semi-regular events for PGT students, so that you get to meet the rest of the community. We try and incorporate the PGR, so the PhD and MPhil students in that as well, of which there's quite a large number in the school. I think somewhere around 35 to 40, with about 15 to 20 working on translation at the moment. And it's really nice to meet them, because they'll be able to tell you about what happens next. And they're often really enthusiastic about their topic. So they'll sometimes come and teach on the program as well, and offer kind of examples and case studies from their own work. We have a fairly regular translation studies reading group, which is both for postgraduate taught and PhD students, where we'll pick something that we won't teach on the course, but is of interest to the PhD community, and have an informal chat about that. And that's a really nice way of getting to find out what people are doing, finding out about more recent research in translation studies, and so on.
Brilliant. So I think we're kind of coming up to time. So I suppose that leaves me to ask if people that are watching now, or perhaps watching on catch up later on, have some questions and want to get in touch, how can they do that?
So the presentation had the administrator's email, but if you want to get in touch with me about academic questions, then you can email me on jonathan.e.evans@glasgow.ac.uk. And if you search Jonathan Evans Translation Glasgow in any search engine, that should put my name up. I will say that there's a slight difficulty in that there are 2 Jonathan Evans at Glasgow. The other of whom is a neuroscientist who is very happy to receive questions about translation and will forward them to me in the same way that I'm very happy to receive questions about neuroscience, and I will forward them to him.
Useful to know. And if one of our YouTube chat moderators could pop the correct email address for you in the chat, just so we're not fielding neuroscience questions, that would be very much appreciated. Okay, well, I suppose all that leaves me to say is a big thank you to you, Jonathan, for joining us today. And I think we will potentially have you back on YouTube in a couple of months' time, perhaps with your colleagues from comparative literature for a Q&A with some of the current students as well. So yeah, if everybody watches this space. But otherwise, thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.